In the Field updates on Market Journal are supported by the Nebraska Corn Board. Along with On the Radio, just tune into the Rural Radio Network for future updates. Well, this year's growing season was one for the record books in one of the worst ways imaginable, southern rust. It was more severe in eastern Nebraska than the previous years. That marks 2 consecutive years that southern rust has expanded its reach here in the Cornhusker State. While it's natural to reflect on these occurrences and wonder why southern rust was able to make another big comeback, misinformation on this topic can spread even faster than southern rust itself. That's why the Market Journal team caught up with Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Tamra Jackson-Ziems to clarify what producers should be focusing on as we head into 2026.
Well, there's several things that I've been hearing on the grapevine that are kind of spreading around the countryside, and I wanted to put some of these things to rest so that people don't come away from this season with some misconceptions that could impact them if they're trying to make management decisions. And for me, the biggest one is that southern rust cannot overwinter in Nebraska or anywhere nearby for that matter. So the rust fungi have to have green living corn tissue to infect other rust as well. And so the closest it may overwinter or really survive would be the farthest north that corn can grow year round. And so that's probably down in Mexico. And so those southern winds have to bring that up into the United States and up into the Midwest and the Great Plains. And it's not unusual to have a little southern rust every year. In fact, 19 of my 20 years here in Nebraska, we've confirmed southern rust, but it does not often or rarely to the extent of what we saw in 2025. And so that's something I want to emphasize. It doesn't overwinter. You're not likely to see that level of rust again. It all depended this year on the weather conditions when those spores arrived and how favorable that was for disease development. One thing about the rust fungi is that they're very, very specific. Almost every important plant species, or even some of the more obscure ones, out in our pastures like brome grass, they all have rust diseases. Fortunately for us, those are very specific and you don't see a lot of hopping between species. And so even though it looks like southern rust on our brome grass and some other species, it's not. It's a different species. Corn is the only one that we know that is the host for the specific species causing southern rust. So that's really good news. But as you might imagine, the same conditions that favor rust on corn also favor rust and other diseases on other plants. And so that's probably what people were seeing. And we've had questions about a super strain of southern rust that we're looking at, and that's not true either. I think what we really witnessed this year was a combination of the most favorable possible conditions, weather conditions and also canopy conditions inside the fields. Optimally, the perfect conditions are about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty mild. And I think we never exceeded about 100 degrees this year, and we averaged in many locations around Nebraska, especially eastern Nebraska, kind of averaged around 80 degrees on many of those days. And many of those days were also overcast. And so we had a lot more cloud cover and reduction in solar radiation. Some parts of the state, like up north, we even had some smoke cover as well. And so that helped keep temperatures more moderate and keep things much more humid as well. Very favorable for rust diseases. I've also gotten a lot of questions this year about performance of our fungicides, and people were worried that maybe they didn't work as well this year. And again, I think what's happening is our fungicides work very well, but how well they work really depends on us applying them at the correct time and doing a good job applying them. And so a lot of that means getting good penetration into the canopy and good leaf coverage, which is really critical to get the best effects from fungicides. And we haven't in the past had as much disease as we've had this year. And so when we've fallen short on any of those, it's become much more obvious. Plus, having overwhelmingly favorable conditions meant that we just had a lot more disease than normal. And so I think that may have exposed a few weaknesses and caught a lot of people off guard. Selecting resistant hybrids is always a good idea. That's not going to be as easy for southern rust. We just don't have as much resistance out there in hybrids that are well adapted for Nebraska. And although that's unfortunate, I would say beef up, kind of scouting is always an excellent idea in your area, but also looking at resources that may come out from Extension, from the Crop Protection Network, where we are trying to monitor disease movement around the country. And so I would do that, monitor your own fields, and be prepared to make an application if necessary. And most years probably don't need to.